Hi Mage Knight community, this is Xander again with more unboxings of Mage Knight Nexus and a couple Omens. Um, this is the second video in the series, so I'm going to just get right to it and open some more packs for everyone. I hopefully will, my janky phone camera setup will be fine, but we'll see because it started to overheat at the end of the last video, so I'll just get right to it. So the first figure is apparently actually a pretty good one. So the orcs I've always kind of liked a little bit, just because they're kind of neat and they're very, I guess, very classic. This guy actually has a not bad paint job, um, especially for Nexus. And he's the Orc Slaver, very cheap, 48 points, Broken Tusk, useful self-action ability. Starts out at a decent dial. 8 speed is unfortunately low, but he has sweep for 90-degree arc, so he can hit up to 2 figures, but it's not that useful. 3 damage, not bad. 17 defense, also not bad, especially for 48 points. Surges into 11 attack, 4 damage with sweep, very handy. Loses ram, but gains frenzy, unfortunate, but has charge. So if you surge, he goes into this, and then he has to either immediately attack if whatever he attacked and die, or he has to charge into and push himself into his next stat, which is 10 sweep, 3 damage. Less good. And goes to 9 attack, and Weapon Master. Gains Frenzy again. But overall, for 48 points, he is pretty strong. Like his first hit, he can deal 6 damage on a surge, or actually 7 damage on a surge, which is pretty powerful, 48 points. You just have to make sure to keep this guy healed, or even just run multiple, because, well, he's not an inexpensive unit, especially for a 300-point game. He's not very expensive at all, especially for the amount of damage he can output. The nice part about the original Slaver is he is also a very cheap unit that had RAM and some harassability, I believe, but this guy has real damage output, so a nice figure to get. Next figure is an unfortunate betrayer of Atlantis. Dagon got switched to the Apocalypse faction. 65 points, relatively cheap. Nice sweep, 10 attack, 3 damage, 10 speed. He was always a fast mover, so he can sweep for 180-degree arc, kind of nice. Has toughness at a unfortunately low defense of 15. That said, he surges straight into 9 attack, which is unfortunate. Maintains it for another click, but then drops off into unfortunate uselessness. Gains frenzy with some increase in attack. Goes back up to 10 and 3 damage at the very end, but by that point there's a good chance he's dying. Aquatic movement speed is not awful, especially since he has submerged on the first click. So not bad, but frenzy really hurts him here because if he surges, which is most likely what you're going to do, he surges right out of his 4 damage. So if you can heal him back up immediately, that's great. But overall, frenzy really hurts the Apocalypse faction. Next figure is a model that I really love. I actually like the original figures from, I believe, Minions they might have been, but it's the Ironclads. Very cool figure. The LA Bronx is a massive beater. This guy is significantly more expensive than the originals. I believe the Tufts were minus 35 points, which is extremely efficient for what they did. Very cool orc. Double hammers, entirely encased in armor. The paint job, because he's encased in armor, is actually not bad on the Nexus version. Although I do like the color highlights from the weak center and tough in Minions. This guy is a lot of power. It's slow at 7 speed, but he has RAM, 10 attack, 4 damage, and invulnerability of 17 defense. Pretty beefy. Unfortunately, he loses the 4 damage immediately, but does gain Thunderblow, which is handy. Low attack at 10, but still useful. Has toughness after it loses invulnerability. Drops off a little bit more, 9 attack, 3 damage. Maintains it with Thunder Blows to keep him still relevant, and then goes down from there. Gains speed actually, because kind of, I guess, the theory on this, or I guess the lore, is he's shedding his armor as he's being beaten up and is able to move faster. Goes up to 10 speed, 8 attack, 3 damage. Gains some damage again, interestingly. and then goes demoralized. The original Ironclads were massive beaters for their points. This guy is a little more expensive and not bad, especially since you can slot it with relics, but maybe not as potent as the originals, but still a very cool figure that I'm happy to get, because I like them all quite a lot. Last figure for this pack is, I can't remember which faction. It might have been actually Draconum originally, but it is the old tribal follower, originally Wisp Freeblade, I think. Now remodeled to be a tribal follower. Orcs. I guess it's a human that decided to follow the orcs. Broken Tusk. Handy has sub-faction ability, especially with a weak attack of 9 there. But this is actually not a bad sacrificial piece to deal a lot of damage because it can infiltrate in, have stealth to protect itself, surge into combat with someone and either weapon master them and deal a lot of damage, or use Broken Tusk and deal 5 damage kind of immediately. After that, though, it really drops off as it gets Frenzy, and while Weapon Master is still useful, attack is mediocre at this point. Gains Charge, which is very handy, and I believe you can use that with a Broken Tusk sub-faction, and Ram even, and goes up to 3 damage, so it can deal up to 6 with Broken Tusk. Again, really hurting itself, but even then, looking at these stats, these are not bad. So this is actually a pretty decent figure, all things considered, if you really take advantage of the Broken Tusk. Like, you're hurting it, but when you hurt it, it goes into a pretty potent dial stats. So actually a pretty good one there. So first one is a shift figure, and a lot of the shift figures for Nexus were not the best. And we got originally Lyra Fairham, I think, now Mind Unbonded Elf. 55 points. Is a caster, but with an unfortunate range of 9. Mage Blast, useful, and has a decent melee stats, 3 damage, dodge, quickness, but again, that 9 range really hurts his Mage Blast ability. Loses dodge immediately, goes down to 2 damage, and kind of drops from there. Gains life drain to get back up to a little bit of decent stats, but not really where you want to be in very short dial, considering it's 55 points. So if you need to fill out your shift army, I guess you could use it, but I would probably just go with more mage spawn. And also this one is a little bit of click rot. Next figure is an unfortunate one, at least for me, because it used to be a very awesome figure. Back in 1.0 is the Xandris and Border, now just a Eel River Bandit for the Elemental faction. I'm not as fond of the Elemental faction, but let's see how this guy stacks up. So right off the bat, this is a very heavy beater. 10 attack, 5 damage, 10 charge, 54 points, very cheap, even dodge. It's a very strong first click. Second click, not even that bad, maintains its 10 attack but drops off to Weapon Master. Gains Frenzy, which is an unfortunate part, so it'll force you into another click. Very similar to the last, a little bit of drop in points, maintains Weapon Master. Drops Frenzy, fortunately then, gains Parry, which will help it survive a little bit with 15 defense, which is not bad, not great. Then it really drops off from there. Gains 3 damage again at 7 attack, which is very tough to hit anything, and goes. I like the Xandris and Border because it was, oh wait, no, it didn't start on its starting click. So original click actually is 11 attack, 4 damage, dodge, surges into that, and then it becomes a monster. So a little bit more similar actually to the original Xandris and Border, but I really like the chaoticness of the original piece. Then, of course, it's Atlantean, so kind of like it for that aspect. Next is another Arcane Apprentice. I showed this one in my last video, but it is a unfortunately mediocre caster piece. It has Oracle Roko, so I guess it can gain Bound, which is not bad, but 8 range really hurts its Mage Blast. Bound is, I guess, probably one of the better options that it can get. So I'm not going to talk about that piece very much. Last figure for this pack is Steel, who was, I don't believe, originally for the Elven Lords or Knights Immortal in 1.0, but now is. 63 points, so relatively cheap, but for a figure 63 points, only has 9 attack, which is unfortunate. 10 move is nice, quickness is good, dodge, and 3 damage is not bad with a 180 arc for a sweep, but mediocre attack really hurts it. Surges into 2 damage, and while it's still very fast, even gains charge later on, isn't very strong. Goes down in damage, goes back up in damage when it loses its sweep, and not that great overall, not for 63 points. I guess it could be a harasser, and you could not surge with it, but that said, kind of expensive for what you get. Let me open one more Nexus pack, and then I'll do another Omens, kind of following the same format as the last video. So, what I got actually, which I believe I got from an auction, or purchase a little while ago, was Coral. Atlantis, because I like it, but I already have this one, so I'll talk very briefly about it. Lots of red on her dial. Quickness, Weapon Master, and Dodge. Pretty decent defense. So not a bad harasser, but 50 points. It's a little more expensive than you'd like. Unfortunately, she drops her attack and defense after the first click, and then it kind of just goes really downhill from there. Not that long of a dial, but double or very poor stats at the very end, and some stealth to try and save her. So she's quick, so she can grab, say, objectives, but there are probably a lot better figures given her point value. Another figure that I just opened actually is an Orc Slaver again. So I just talked about this guy. Potent figure. Very nice stats. Pretty psyched about this one. Double Orc Slavers. Kinda cool. And powerful beaters. Got a Mage spawn this time, Circle Sage, Order of the Ninth Circle, non-unique figure, kind of interesting. I guess what can it bring to other factions? And unfortunately that is not very much. It does have Stormfire, but at 2 damage it's less useful, and especially with a 9-inch range, not that great. Does gain Mage Blast, which 9-inch range could be better, but it's not the worst, and maintains that 10 of ranged attack. And then gains magic healing. So if you need magic healers, like the Atlanteans often do, you could do worse than this. You could also do better. And then it gains ghost form and some magic confusion and hex, so it can act as a support piece. So this guy's a support piece through and through. Not great for 50 points for a pure support piece that is needs some hurting before it gets there, because he starts out as an attacker, and a not great one at that. So there are better options, certainly, but I guess there are also worse options. And last figure for this Nexus pack is Jarl Stonehill. I actually believe this guy was originally a Draconan figure, and he maintains his Draconan faction, despite being a dwarf. And he has kind of interesting stats, because I guess this is a gun of sorts. Yeah, it's a little pistol. You can see the handle there. If I can focus in on that. No, it won't. Anyway, 75 points, fairly expensive. 8 bound, 8 range, so a 16 effective range is not the worst, not the best, not the worst. And vulnerability is very nice. 10 attack is decent. Loses the invulnerability immediately, but gains Mage Blast. Drops a little bit in the attack, which is too bad. Still has bound, so you could bound and hit or Mage Blast at an 8-inch range. That said, if you're Mage Blasting at 8-inch range, you're really putting yourself in danger with this guy. Movement speed drops down again, although he keeps that 9 attack, which is nice, and keeps going. His attack is actually very stable, all things considered, not really dropping below 8, but his speed plummets And his range is unfortunately not very good for a ranged piece. I guess he's a good support piece or bodyguard for other support pieces, but 75 points, that is kind of unfortunate because you want him to be a bit stronger of a piece alone. So I will open up one more pack for this video. Keep this video about the same length as the last one, and I'll make it an Omens one just like before. So first figure is an unfortunately broken Riven Guard Archers. Now it's too bad that it's broken off his bow. I'll try to find it in this booster pack box. But he's a very cool figure. 46 points is very expensive, and especially 8-inch range is really too bad. 3 damage is pretty good for a common, and 3 in close combat, so he can really defend himself. Pathfinder, not too bad with 9 move, but that 8-inch range really hurts them a lot. Kind of unfortunate there. No relevant sub-faction abilities either. Pretty stable stats, all things considered, though. But that 8-inch range is really not going to do it for him. Being an archer, you really need at the very least 10, and ideally 12 or 14. But let's see if we can find his bow as I get through this pack. Next, I have one of the Frost Wolves. So I like the original werewolves a lot from 1.0. These are not them, but they're a little different spin. They're higher, it's stronger up front. This guy is a 39 points, so a little expensive for a harasser, so he's kind of a bruiser that you actually want to be dealing damage with. 9 attack, 3 damage, crushing blow, and quickness is pretty nice. Drops off immediately to 8 attack, 3 damage, and charge. Charge is very nice, but that 8 attack is not doing him any favors. And while it is very stable for several clicks afterwards, his damage drops off, and he's 2 damage is, I guess, respectable this late in the dial. But his attack really needs some help. And I guess that's kind of why he's a good pair for Shift and Release in the set, is so you can have Shift with them to use their Augment sub-faction ability to buff his attack. Next I have a pretty good figure, the Amazon Warrior. So lore-wise, the Amazons switch from BPR, Black Powder Rebels or Revolutionaries, to the Sullen Na'vi. And what did they gain for that? Becoming monsters in close combat. They always kind of were this, but as a common piece, 36 points, pretty cheap. 9 charge, Pathfinder, 10 attack, 3 damage, phenomenal for that point value. Take a click of damage, drops her attack and damage, unfortunately, but gains Venom, which is very handy, 135 degree arc. Auto damage is very powerful. Another hit, maintains that, loses the charge, unfortunately, but still maintains, if it'll focus, 9 attack, 2 damage, Venom, and keeps that Venom for even another click, 8 attack. After that, drops off a little bit, relatively short dial, but very strong for 36 points. Very potent figure. Let's see, before I get to the last figure, let's look at what I got for a card. And I got the Corvin Deathblade. Let's see, so what's this one? Give a wielder a close combat action, roll 1 6-sided die and subtract 3 from the result, minimum of 0. Deal pushing damage equal to the result to all figures in base contact with the wielder's front arc, and 1 damage to the wielder. Has to be used by Apocalypse, which is unfortunate, but this can be, if you get lucky, very strong, because it can deal up to 3 pushing damage to basically in a sweep. So someone like, say, Dagon, it can be very powerful because he has a 180 arc and it can sweep and hurt opponents that way. That said, you could also just do 4 damage. But I guess if you're facing people with toughness, or invulnerability, or dodge, this is a very handy card. That said, it adds 36 points. The attack is nice, but it can make an expensive figure. So lastly, let's see what I got in here, and ooh, let's see, what's this one? I don't think I have this one actually, but it's Vok Hama, the Champion Shift Fiend for a Shift. And I can't remember if Vok Hama is better or Quadroma in terms of supporting shift. But this guy is quite strong, even just the initial dial, which is kind of hard to show here, but I don't know which stat dial this is, but 10 attack, 4 damage, 9 quickness, and visually these guys are very cool. I don't really want to take it out in case I already have it and someone would like it sealed, but it is a very cool figure, one that I'm happy to get. So I'll call it for this video.